I raised my son alone, got betrayed by everyone, and still made it. But sometimes I still cry in the car like it's 2014. There's this thing that happens when you grow up in a small town. People already have your life mapped out before you've even had your first kiss. For me, that map was simple. Stay close to home, marry someone local, work somewhere safe, raise decent kids, don't get too loud, don't want too much. And for a long time, I was okay with that. I was the quiet one. The one who got good grades, said, "Yes, ma'am," didn't drink at parties. My mom worked nights at the hospital. My dad did construction and chain smoked when he thought we weren't looking. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either, just invisible enough. I didn't dream big. I wasn't brave enough for that. Until I met Eli. I was 19 when we started dating. He was 23, wore denim like it was a religion, and had this reckless smile that made everyone forget the rules. I'd seen him around town for years. He worked at the auto shop, played guitar at dive bars, and never seemed to take life seriously. He shouldn't have looked at someone like me twice, but he did. And when someone like that looks at someone like you don't say no. You convince yourself it's love. And for a while, maybe it was. We used to sit on the hood of his truck and talk about everything we weren't going to do. "We're not going to be like them," he'd say. Stuck, angry, old before 30. I believed him. I thought he was different. And when I told him I was pregnant, shaking, crying, terrified out of my damn mind, he held me and said, "We got this, you and me." I wish I could say that was the moment I knew I could trust him. But what I really remember is the flicker of fear in his eyes, just for a second, before he pulled me close. The first few months weren't bad. My belly grew. He stopped going out as much. My parents were disappointed, but not cruel. They let us move into the basement. My mom brought me soup like I was still her little girl. But Eli? He started to pull away. Just a little at first, skipping doctor appointments, saying work was too busy, sleeping on the couch. Because my back hurts. By the time our son was born, Eli was practically a ghost in his own life. He didn't even hold our baby until 3 days in, said he was scared, said he didn't know how, and I tried to be understanding because I was 20, exhausted, bleeding, alone in a room full of people pretending everything was fine. The night he left, our son was 3 months old. I'd just put him down after his third screaming fit of the night. I walked into the kitchen and saw Eli sitting at the table, holding a beer he hadn't even opened. He didn't look up. "I can't do this," he said. That was it. No fight, no dramatic scene. He stood up, kissed the top of my head, and walked out. I never saw him again. My parents tried to help, for a while, but my dad was ashamed. He didn't speak to me for a month after Eli left. My mom started leaving job applications on the kitchen table, like quiet threats. Eventually, they gave me a deadline. "You have 6 weeks to figure things out." I remember standing on the porch with my baby in my arms, a half-packed duffel bag at my feet, wondering how love could collapse this fast, wondering if anyone was coming to save me. No one did. There's no elegant way to say this. I lived in my car with my son for 3 weeks. It was a '97 Civic with no air conditioning and a baby seat I got secondhand. I parked behind a 24-hour laundromat because it had security lights and a water spout I could use to wash bottles. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that someone would call, that a job would come through, that something, anything would shift. It didn't. I tried shelters. Most were full. The one that had space told me I'd need to separate from my baby if I wanted to stay overnight. That was the first time I screamed at a stranger. I didn't cry in front of my son. I made a game out of it. I called it sleepover camping. Eventually, I found a job as a night server at a greasy 24/7 diner off the interstate. The kind of place where truckers leave $2 tips and the coffee never stops burning. The manager was a woman named Sharon, mid-50s, heavy smoker, hard eyes. First time she saw me, she said, "You got help or is this it?" I said, "It's just me." She stared for a second too long, then said, "So, all right, I'll pay you under the table till you get the papers in. Don't steal from the register, and I don't care if you cry in the freezer. Everyone does." That night, I cried in the freezer. My shifts were 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. I left my son with a girl I barely knew, Caitlin, 19, lived with her grandma, posted on Facebook about crystals and manifestation. She let me crash on her couch a few nights a week, but it was clear I wasn't going to be able to stay long. "My Nana says this isn't a hostel," she whispered one night, avoiding my eyes. "She said you're bringing bad energy." Bad energy? I didn't even have the energy to argue. The lowest moment? It wasn't sleeping in the car. It wasn't being screamed at by a customer who thought his hash browns were too soggy. It was when I had to choose between buying formula and getting gas. And I chose gas. I sat in the parking lot of a Walmart, heart hammering, pretending to fill out a survey while I waited for anyone, to leave their cart and walk back to their car. When they did, I asked if they had any baby formula they didn't use anymore. I was shaking so hard I couldn't speak clearly. The woman looked at me like I was scum, like I was trying to scam her. She said no, and I smiled and thanked her, and walked away before I burst into tears. Eventually, Sharon started letting me take leftover food from the diner home. Mostly eggs and day-old muffins, but it kept us fed. One night, she caught me in the back room, trying to warm up a bottle with hot tap water. I expected to be yelled at. Instead, she handed me an old, battered microwave from the break room and said, "Don't let the health inspector see this, but you can use it. That woman will always be part of the reason I survived." My body started giving out by week 6. I was sleeping maybe 2 hours a day. I smelled like fryer grease and cheap soap. I developed a stress rash on my hands and lost 12 pounds I didn't have to lose. The pediatrician called me in for a wellness check because I'd missed 2 appointments. I told her the truth. She offered me 3 pamphlets and a quiet, pitying look. "You're doing your best, I can tell." But I wasn't. I was drowning. Then one night it changed. I served a couple, mid-30s, tired but kind eyes, road trippers. The wife asked about my necklace. It was a tiny heart my mom gave me in high school, the only thing I hadn't pawned. I said it was the only part of home I had left. She didn't say anything, just smiled. They tipped me $100 and wrote on the receipt, "For the baby, you've got this." I still have that receipt. It's in a box next to his first shoes and our first apartment key. Because in that moment, when I read those words in the kitchen at 4:12 a.m., covered in syrup and anxiety, I finally believed it. I could have this. I just had to take it. The thing they never tell you about starting over? It's boring. It's not always a montage of success and smiles. Sometimes it's just budgeting $27 for diapers and gas and hoping no one at the diner notices you're wearing the same bra 3 days in a row. It's working until your knees ache and falling asleep before your baby does, sitting upright, holding a bottle like a zombie. But that's what the beginning looked like for me. Boring survival. And that was better than drowning. After the $100 tip from the road trip couple, I opened a new bank account. I told myself it would be the first time I built something just for me and my son. Not Eli, not my parents, just us. I called it the Never Going Back Fund. Every shift, I put in whatever I could, even if it was $2.65. It was a joke at first, literally, just a greasy envelope with coins in it, but it became a ritual, a reason. One night, Sharon handed me a flyer she pulled off the diner bulletin board. Free community night classes, GED, job skills, online certs. She tossed it on the counter like it was nothing. But it was everything. I didn't even tell anyone. I just went. Once a week, from 6 to 7 p.m., before my shift. My son sat in the back of the classroom in his stroller while I learned how to send proper business emails and format a resume. The instructor, a woman named Mrs. Levon, didn't say much. But at the end of the 3rd week, she pulled me aside and said, "You're smarter than you act like you are." And I think I almost cried right there. I applied for jobs I had no business applying for. I got rejected 73 times. Yes, I counted. Then one day, I applied to be a part-time receptionist at a local dentist's office. I was honest in the interview. I told them I didn't have experience, but I had no choice but to figure things out fast. I told them I was always on time. I told them I didn't take days off because I couldn't afford to. They gave me the job. 12th hour, Mondays to Thursdays. I quit the diner the next day. Sharon hugged me before I left. "Just don't forget us when you're famous." I was making $600 a month. It wasn't enough, but it was different. It meant my son had a consistent schedule. I could wear real shoes. I didn't smell like eggs all the time. I felt human again. But I wanted more. One night, I was watching YouTube tutorials on Canva, and how to make flyers and logos just to understand how marketing worked. I became obsessed. I learned what SEO was, how Facebook ads worked, how people ran side hustles. I thought, if I can survive 4 a.m. shifts and sleeping in a Civic, I can do this. So I offered to redo the dentist's email newsletter for free. They said yes. 3 weeks later, they gave me a $100 bonus and told me their patient signups doubled. I cried in the bathroom. By the time my son turned 2, I had 3 freelance clients. Local businesses, low pay, tons of stress, but real. Real money, real growth, real skills. And for the first time in my adult life, I was proud of myself. But nothing good comes easy, not even progress. Just when I was starting to believe I was going to be okay, my sister came back into the picture. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. She lived 2 towns over, taught yoga, posted things on Facebook like good vibes only, and if you're not manifesting, you're sleeping. When she found out I was doing better, she reached out, said she wanted to reconnect. Mom and Dad told me you've been working hard. I'm proud of you. I wanted to believe her, so I let her in. We did lunch. She met my son. She said all the right things. Then, one night, she said she knew someone who ran a PR firm and needed freelance help. Said she recommended me. I was over the moon. She gave me the contact. I sent a sample. We set up a trial gig, $500 for 5 pieces of content. I did it, sent it in, waited. No reply. A week later, I called the number again. Disconnected. I called my sister, straight to voicemail. Then I saw her post a story on Instagram. Photos of a coffee shop meetup. The caption, "Love collaborating with my new client. Sucks content girlies, checks freelance win." She'd stolen my client, used my work, branded it as her own. When I messaged her, she replied, "You were too overwhelmed with your kid anyway. I needed this." That was the night I punched a hole in my own bathroom door. But I didn't quit. Because I couldn't. And because I'd been through worse. After what my sister did, I stopped trusting people for a long time. Every time I got a new client, or even a friendly email, a part of me would freeze, waiting for the catch. But something strange happened in the weeks after that betrayal. I worked harder. And not just out of spite, not just to prove a point. I did it because for the first time in my life, I knew I could. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was climbing. My son was turning 3. We still shared a 1-bedroom apartment that smelled vaguely like mildew and boiled cabbage. But it was ours, could finally afford a twin bed for him, not just a fold-up mattress. I decorated his side of the room with glow-in-the-dark stars and thrift store dinosaurs. Every night, we had a ritual. I'd ask him what made him happy that day. One night, he said, "Mommy wasn't sad today." That answer hit harder than anything else anyone had ever said to me. Around that time, one of my freelance clients, a boutique skincare shop, landed a feature in a local magazine. I'd helped run their campaign. Nothing major, just a simple 12 Days of Glow series on Instagram with customer testimonials and giveaways. When the article came out, they gave me full credit. And suddenly, I had 5 DMs in my inbox, asking if I could do what I did for them. That was the day I stopped calling myself just a freelancer. That was the day I wrote my own title at the top of my resume. Digital marketing consultant. I didn't feel like a fraud. I felt like a fighter. Still, there were things success couldn't fix. Like the time my son asked me, "Why don't I have a daddy?" I froze. I'd rehearsed this answer 100 times in my head. But in that moment, every script vanished. I said, "He couldn't be the kind of daddy you deserved." He blinked and said, "Oh, okay." Then he went back to playing with his cars. But I sat on the floor and cried, silently. While he built ramps out of cereal boxes, money got better. I started saying no to lowball clients. I raised my rates. I built a website. I got a P.O. box so I could register my business legally. Every win was hard-earned. There were still nights I didn't sleep. There were still mornings I fed him first and skipped breakfast. There were moments I wondered if it was fair if I was giving him a broken version of childhood, one I couldn't fix with stickers and microwave mac and cheese. But then he started saying things like, "When I grow up, I want to work like you, Mommy. Not be a firefighter or drive a race car." He wanted to work, like me. He saw me building something, even if it was small. To him, I was strong. And sometimes that was enough. The biggest shift came the day I spoke at a local women's resource center. One of my clients had mentioned they needed a speaker for a free seminar, someone to talk about finding work online, starting with no experience. They couldn't pay, but they offered childcare, snacks, and exposure. Usually I hated exposure, but something in me said yes. The room was filled with women who looked how I used to feel. Tired, embarrassed, lost, invisible. I stood there, sweaty palms, cracked voice, wearing my best Target blazer, and said, I was homeless. I was lied to. I was raising a baby with no savings and no backup plan. But I learned how to market cupcakes on Instagram for $10 a week, and now I work for companies that send me PayPal transfers before I even get out of bed. They laughed. They cried. And when it was over, 3 of them came up to hug me. I drove home shaking, not from nerves, but from clarity. I wasn't just a single mom trying to get by anymore. I was a woman building something bigger than herself. That night, I made a LinkedIn post about the seminar. I don't even remember what I wrote exactly. Something about resilience, about building from nothing, about how survival isn't shameful. It got 22,000 likes. 3 companies reached out within a week, and one of them changed my life. The company that messaged me after my LinkedIn post, a boutique e-learning platform out of Austin. Female-run, values-based. They'd seen the post, clicked my site, loved my tone. They were hiring for a remote content strategist. Contract to start, but good pay. I didn't even blink. I said yes. I worked nights for 2 weeks redoing their email funnels, social graphics, blog copy, everything. I was terrified they'd figure out I'd learned all this from YouTube and desperation. But they didn't blink either. They offered me a 1-year retainer at 4 times what I'd ever made monthly. That's when I stopped calling myself lucky. I moved out of the 1-bedroom, found a small 2-bedroom unit with clean walls, real windows, and space for my son to have a bed that didn't fold up. We had a little balcony. I bought a plastic table and 2 chairs from Facebook Marketplace. We'd sit out there on Sundays, sipping orange juice like it was champagne. That balcony? It felt like a rooftop in Manhattan. My son was 5 when I realized I couldn't protect him from everything anymore. He asked if his daddy had died or just didn't like us. It gutted me, like someone reached in and squeezed my lungs shut. I told him the truth, more than I ever had before. Your daddy didn't know how to stay, but I did, and I always will. He nodded slowly. Okay, can I still draw him with us sometimes? My voice cracked. Yeah, baby, you can draw anything you want. He drew 3 stick figures that night. 1 was him, 1 was me. 1 was a smiley face with a question mark above its head. I kept that picture in my wallet.